Hello and welcome to IoT World Today. I'm Lauren Horwitz, Senior Content Director, and I'm joined today by Ali Syed Moshin, Senior Analyst for Industrial Connectivity at Omdia, and the author of the recent report, 5G in Manufacturing, i5G 2020. And I'm looking forward to this conversation about connectivity and industrial environments and talking with you, Ali. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lauren, for taking time out for this interview.
So let's talk a little bit about why the 5G standard is so compelling for the manufacturing sector and why it might take some time to take hold. We know from a recent survey that we did on IoT World Today on technology adoption and IoT that about 53% of respondents said that they will deploy 5G over the next 18 months, but not immediately.
Well, that's a very interesting question. Obviously, 5G is a very exciting technology because of certain features which 5G has to offer. So, for example, 5G offers private networks, and particularly for manufacturing sector, it is very important because the manufacturers or the end user within the sector, they really love to have control over their data. So private networks offer them this possibility of running their own network. And then another very interesting feature which was not present in its predecessors, so in 4G or 3G, is real-time communication. So the ability of this technology to offer real-time data transfer is also one of the key features of this technology, particularly for manufacturing industry. Then obviously, if you also kind of look in terms of how it's being deployed in terms of ease of deployment, 5G perhaps is the easiest among all the cellular technologies to deploy because I can give you sort of an interesting example that if you want to run, let's say, a 5G network in a limited space, you actually need a box which is of the same size as your home router. So it's such a small box, and using that you can actually run a 5G network. And then another interesting sort of feature of this technology is you do not need device to connect, right? It's just a wireless technology. So there are quite a few dark sites which are present in the manufacturing facilities, which now can be connected using 5G. So this is like why it is so important. Then also touching upon your sort of question on why it might take some time. So what we really need to think about is the manufacturing space in general. So manufacturing space is a slow moving space, and part of the reason for that is that the life cycle of the product with or products within this sector is way more than that of the products within the consumer segment. So we use our cell phones or tablets or laptops for what, 3 to 4 years. But when we look at manufacturing space, there are equipments which are installed today within the factories, which are as old as 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the other reasons why you might not see 5G being deployed right away because of the development of the whole ecosystem, which is very nascent today.
So you started to allude to some of this, but since we know that 5G is going to take some time to kind of roll out in full, let's talk about some of the barriers to adoption of 5G in the near term.
Certainly, like every new technology, 5G has some barriers to its adoption. First of all, there is a high cost in terms of deployment. So when we talk about high cost, we recently did a survey where we asked about 200 enterprises around the pricing of wired versus wireless industrial connectivity technologies, and we got to know from that particular survey that wireless technology is 20% more expensive than wired technology today. Then we move on to another barrier, which is lack of expertise. So today, when we speak to an automation engineer, the automation engineer will say that, okay, the automation engineer might have used wireless technologies like Wi-Fi or Zigbee or wireless HART, but cellular technology has not been used within the sector before. So there are some use cases, yes, but there are very few installed nodes. So there is a lack of expertise and competencies within this sector when it comes to understanding of the cellular technology. Then, as we speak, there are very few proven use cases for this technology, barring AGVs. So that's another uh, barrier to the adoption of this technology. Then, as I've mentioned, that it's such a new technology that in the absence of an developed ecosystem, it's hard to prove ROI because it is very capital intensive. I mean, imagine you have several hectares of a manufacturing plant when you talk about, automotive manufacturing plant, and you have to install a network over there. You would need quite a bit of an investment.
So you started to talk a little bit about use cases. As we move forward, what are some of the promising use cases you think will sort of lay the foundation for increased adoption?
Well, so far, first of all, in fact, I'll like to talk about the low-hanging fruit. So AGVs, as I mentioned, is going to be one of the biggest or the largest use case in terms of numbers, just the volume, and we'll see that happening, in a year's time. From there on, you'll see mass adoption of this technology for AGVs. But in the long run, I see it being used in collaborative robotic systems or collaborative robots. Then we have real-time analytics and monitoring. So in all those kind of applications where you need real-time communication, it will be penetrating in the future.
And let me ask just finally whether you have some summary thoughts for the audience about where 5G is headed in manufacturing.
Of course, I would like to emphasize on the fact that manufacturing space is different from consumer space, because I felt that this sort of have been causing a lot of confusions, be it on the telco side, or be it on the infrastructure providers, or the network operators. That it's very important to understand the pace at which things move within manufacturing sector. As I mentioned, I gave you example of the product like cycle. Then obviously what we really need to understand is that this is an amazing technology with really interesting features, but it's still a nascent technology. So we need to give it more time so that the ecosystem can develop. And lastly, what I would also like to emphasize here is that in order for this technology to be deployed within manufacturing sector, there is a greater need for collaboration between the IT companies and the OT companies. Without that collaboration, we won't be seeing, the development of an ecosystem where this technology can prosper, as well as, being adopted within the manufacturing or the industrial space.
That's a good point. We talk quite a bit about this IT OT divide and how these different departments that often have been, traditionally working in silos can kind of come together, and that of course will take some time for their methodologies, their information to kind of converge. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, it is the need of time, because if we really want to digitalize our industry, we really need that kind of collaboration. And obviously, the OT and the IT teams, or the let's say the people, they really need to understand the pace at which the others move, because in manufacturing or the OT side, the pace of adoption and the considerations which you really need to sort of take for a certain technology to be adopted are slightly different. I mean, on the IT side, you can basically take a risk, because imagine you use, so yesterday, I'll just give you an example very quickly. So yesterday there was a news around Tesla having some troubles with its network, right? Some of the drivers were locked out. So it's inconvenience in the consumer side of things, or consumer business. But when you talk about manufacturing, it's not only inconvenience, we're talking about a loss of millions of dollars. That's the difference between, say the IT mentality or the OT mentality in terms of how they operate.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ali, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to meeting with you again to discuss the progress of 5G and how it's kind of taking shape in the manufacturing sector. So thank you so much for joining us again.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
And you can check out Ali's recent report, 5G in Manufacturing, I5G in 2020 on the Omdia site. And also, if our viewers are interested in reading more about industrial IoT, you can always check out our coverage on IoT World Today. So that's it for today, and we'd like to thank you for joining us. And until next time, I'm Lauren Horwitz.